Alright guys, we are now in 2025. This is where we really get into the business end of this championship season. The January transfer window is now open. We'll be covering that throughout the month on the channel, but the focus of today's video will be on all the matches coming up in the championship this weekend. Obviously, all the midweek games will be discussed throughout today's video as well. Make sure to get your score predictions in the comments down below. Without any further ado though, let's jump in. Starts now with an absolutely huge game. It's Blackburn going up against Burnley. Both sides coming off the back of a draw in midweek. Blackburn will absolutely take that point away at Ellen Road. Looked like they lost it late on with that penalty, but Danny Barker getting them back into it. Going up against a Burnley side who have now drawn consecutive matches without scoring, 0-0 in Burnley's last two matches. That has been quite a common scoreline with Burnley this season. I did a bit more digging into their season so far, and 28% of their championship matches up until this point have finished goalless, which I think is absolutely bonkers. To be honest with you, I do think this game will be fairly tight and low scoring. Burnley obviously don't give that much away to the opposition. Blackburn have tended to have a really good record at Ewood Park this season. Results have somewhat dried up for Blackburn recently, who are now winless in their last 4 matches, but they've had a tough run of fixtures of late. Burnley are unbeaten against Blackburn in their last 10 head-to-head meetings against them. I think I'm talking myself into a draw. 1-1 between these two, I'm saying, to kick off the weekend. And then we go to Stoke up against Plymouth Argyle, and so much has changed at these two clubs over the last few weeks. We've had Mark Robins being announced as the new Stoke City manager. He'll take his first game in charge against Plymouth at the Bet365 Stadium this weekend, and a good opportunity to get off to a winning start, I must say. Now, to be fair to Stoke, I thought they looked fairly solid in those 2 matches while Ryan Shawcross was in interim charge. Obviously a solid point for them away at Turf Moor last time. This feels like a good opportunity though to put down a bit of a statement performance. Obviously Plymouth, having parted company with Wayne Rooney, did battle their way back into that game against Bristol City and claimed a 2-2 draw on New Year's Day, but I mean, away form wasn't just a Wayne Rooney problem. This has been a Plymouth problem for quite some time. Even thinking back to Schumacher's days with Plymouth in the Championship, they were still really dodgy in away matches. So that's going to be something they need to sort out. I feel like the home crowd will be right up for this one, getting behind Mark Robins. Score prediction for me, I'm going to go 2-0 Stoke in that game. And then as the last of the early kickoffs on Saturday, we're going to Swansea up against West Brom. This is an interesting fixture, especially because Swansea boss Luke Williams is one of the names currently being linked with the vacancy at West Brom. So we'll have to wait and see if anything comes of those rumours. But yeah, it does make this fixture that little bit more interesting. For Swansea, it felt like they'd started to turn a corner, having won back-to-back games over the festive period, but then in midweek they were absolutely tonked away at Portsmouth, losing that one by 4-0. Going up against a West Brom side who, well, there has been quite a bit of chaos behind the scenes there recently, obviously with the departure of Carlos Corberán. A good result for them on New Year's Day, by far the better team against Preston North End, and to be honest with you, they didn't really need to get out of second gear for that game, which is the biggest compliment I can sort of give to West Brom really. Swansea have been a lot better in home matches recently. They've won their last 2 at home. You feel like there has to be a reaction after shipping 4 against Portsmouth last time. Score prediction, I'm going to go for a draw there. 1-1 between those two. After that, we go to Ashton Gate for Bristol City up against Derby. For Derby, it is now just 2 wins from their last 11 matches. Well beaten at Hillsborough on New Year's Day. 4-2 in the end by Sheffield Wednesday. How do they look to react in this one? Well, it's an interesting game really. I did feel like Bristol City somewhat missed a bit of an opportunity in their recent clash with Plymouth. They had a real chance to close the gap on the sides above them, close in on the top 6, but obviously ended up conceding late on and they had to settle for a point away at Plymouth. Home form has been pretty decent for Bristol City recently though. They've won 3 of their last 4 games at Ashton Gate. I reckon they may just sneak this one as well. Score prediction, I'm going to go 2-1 Bristol City in that game. After that, we go to Hull up against Leeds United. I definitely think we've seen an improvement from Hull in recent weeks under Ruben Sellers, but ultimately what their survival bid this season was always going to depend upon, I think, was the January window and what they're going to do this month in terms of strengthening that squad. Obviously a narrow loss for them on New Year's Day, losing 1-0 against Middlesbrough. Been a bit of a trend that recently with Hull, and a lot of the matches they have been losing. Their last 4 losses have all been by a 1-goal margin, so they've been all in all of those games they've been losing recently just haven't always quite had the rub of the green, and this one feels like another really tough encounter. Obviously, Leeds looking to bounce back from dropping points at Elland Road last time out against Blackburn. It always seems like John Eustace has a trick up his sleeve and knows how to get one over on Daniel Farke, doesn't he? But in fairness to Leeds, away form, I mean, we've spoken about it as a bit of an issue all season, but over the festive period they went back-to-back away games at Stoke and Derby, won both those games and won them both with a clean sheet as well. This feels like a similar sort of test that I reckon they will get through. Score prediction for me, I'm going to go 2-0 Leeds on the road in that game. Next then we go to the Riverside for Middlesbrough up against Cardiff. It was a much needed win for Middlesbrough last time out, beating Hull late on to finally get back to winning ways after quite a few draws that they've had recently. And to be fair to Middlesbrough, the overall form book has been pretty decent for them recently, despite a lot of frustrating draws of late. They've only lost 2 of their last 12 matches, and looking at some of their upcoming fixtures, this one against Cardiff and then next up against Portsmouth, there are some winnable games coming up and a chance for Michael Carrick's side maybe to put a few wins together. Now, Cardiff will make this one tough. They've had a little bit of a bounce recently, obviously went to Watford away recently, came out with all 3 points, drew that game at home against Coventry despite playing the majority of that second half down to 10 men. Now, as of recording, Callum Robinson will be suspended for this one from a Cardiff perspective, but I believe the club is planning to appeal that red card, so he could very well escape punishment and be back for this one, but we'll have to wait and see. I think it'll be fairly tight and Middlesbrough could make hard work of it, but I reckon they'll just about get the job done. 1-0 Middlesbrough, I'm saying, for this one. After that, we go to Carrow Road for Norwich up against Coventry. Norwich coming off the back of a good result away at Luton. Away form has been a little bit spotty for the Canaries all season, but all 3 points at, stereotypically a tough ground like Kenilworth Road isn't to be sniffed at, and they'll probably be fancying their chances back at Carrow Road, where they've typically been quite strong this season. Coventry still finding their feet under Frank Lampard. It was a really frustrating one for them on New Year's Day, playing against 10-men Cardiff for that second half, really pushing for the winner after Sakamoto got them back into that game, but just nothing quite fell for them in the final third, and in the end had to settle for a point, which wasn't the best result. That's now back-to-back draws for Coventry. I wouldn't be surprised if this game heads in a similar direction. I can see both teams creating chances, but not much to separate them. Score prediction, I'm going to go for a 2-2 draw there. Fancy a few goals either side. Next then we go to Deepdale for Preston up against Oxford. Now, had this fixture taken place a few weeks ago, I think most people would have been quite confident in predicting a Preston home win, but the way Oxford have been going about their business since the appointment of Gary Rowett, I'm not totally sure, to be honest with you. Preston obviously coming off the back of quite a poor showing away at West Brom on New Year's Day as well. We gave them some really cheap goals and let's face it, the game was over at half-time, wasn't it? In fairness to North End, we have been better at home recently and under Paul Heckingbottom in general in his 12 home games at Preston so far. We've only lost 1 of them, but this Oxford squad do have a trick up their sleeves at the moment. It's 3 consecutive wins for Gary Rowett, and I must point out, Gary Rowett has a really good head-to-head record against Preston North End. It's easy to forget as well, Oxford did beat Preston in the reverse fixture earlier in the season. Thought Oxford looked really good on that day, but obviously under Des Buckingham at the time. Score prediction here, I'm going to go on the fence. 1-1 draw, I'm saying, but I've got a bad feeling that Rowett could pull off another away day masterclass and maybe sort of a 1-0 Oxford or something like that. But 1-1 I'm saying for that game. After that we go to Sheffield Wednesday up against Millwall. Like we were just mentioning then for Alex Neil, not the ideal start as Millwall boss, losing 1-0 at home to Oxford with former Millwall boss Gary Rowett getting one over on you, and it doesn't get much easier here against a Sheffield Wednesday side who have just put 4 goals past Derby. Brilliant way for Wednesday to bounce back from what was quite a poor showing previously at Deepdale. One thing we mentioned about Wednesday in that last video is how brilliant they've been at reacting to losses this season. They've not lost back-to-back matches this season, Wednesday, since August, which is, a really good trait to have. It does feel like they've got a bit more firepower about them at this point in time than Millwall have as well, don't they? And with Millwall being not the best travellers this season, I think I am edging it towards Sheffield Wednesday. Score prediction there, I'm going 2-1 1 Wednesday, which wouldn't be a great start for Neil with back-to-back losses. After that, we go to Watford up against Sheffield United. I certainly don't think there'll be any panic within the Sheffield United ranks right now, coming off the back of that loss against Sunderland, but a bit of a frustrating one maybe, given the overall balance of play and how Sunderland's goals came about from a Sheffield United perspective. You can see a few gaps starting to appear within that squad, can't you? When the injuries pop up, you'll look at the strength of the bench, and at the moment there aren't quite those players to come on and make a sufficient impact, but it feels like a decent time to be playing Watford, who have now lost 3 of their last 4 matches. I know that Vicarage Road has typically been a really tough place to go to so far this season, but obviously last time out we saw Cardiff going there, getting all 3 points, and Watford have since gone to QPR and lost 3-1. I think this is quite a big weekend for Sheffield United, especially with an FA Cup weekend coming up. I think there's a very good chance that Sunderland and Leeds definitely win this weekend as well, which, I mean, Sheffield United drop points again, that gap could start to open up, especially if Burnley do the damage over Blackburn as well. But I reckon we'll see a bounce back from Sheffield United here. 2-1 to the Blades, I'm saying, for that game, but I never like backing against Watford at home. After that, we go to the Stadium of Light for Sunderland up against Portsmouth. Brilliant result for Portsmouth, it has to be said, beating Sheffield United and putting themselves back into the automatic promotion race, really. I know that points-wise, they've always been close to Leeds, Burnley and Sheffield United, but for a lot of people, I think it's almost felt like a bit of a top 3 this season, with Sunderland just hanging in there. But yeah, a real statement result from the Black Cats against Sheffield United, and a good chance for them now to go on a good winning run. Portsmouth obviously needed that bounce back on New Year's Day. They got it in an emphatic style against Swansea, putting 4 goals past them at Fratton Park. Where their struggles have come recently, though, have been on the road. They've lost their last 3 consecutive away matches by an aggregate score of 9-1. I think Sunderland could get a few goals in this one, if I'm being honest with you. Score prediction for me, I'm going to go 3-0 Sunderland. And then to finish off this round of games at QPR against Luton, I think most people will be fancying the home side for another result in this one. It's 4 consecutive home wins for QPR. They're on an absolute roll under Marty Cifuentes right now. Great result for them last time out, beating Watford by 3-1, and it has to be said, it feels like a really good time to be playing Luton right now, especially with all the troubles that they've had on the road recently. But I mean, even in home matches, Luton have been coming unstuck in recent matches. The relationship between Luton fans and Rob Edwards, the players, has become really fractured in recent weeks as a result of these inconsistent performances. On the road for Luton, it's 9 consecutive losses. I'm not sure I see them turning that around against the QPR side, who have been in fine form recently. Score prediction for me, I'm going to go 3-1 QPR in that game. But guys, there you have it. That will now wrap it up for today's video. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you did go on to enjoy, make sure to leave a like and do drop all your score predictions in the comments down below. Other than that though, guys, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.